theyeshiva.net.
Okay, Tayir Yid Pesachim Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, the Mishnah. The background to this new Mishnah is that we know, after we discussed B'dikas Chametz, the first three Mishnahs discussed B'dikas Chametz. We now move on in time. We finish with B'dikas Chametz, which is, oh, nice, very good. You prepared it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, very good. I was thinking if I need to make a handout. Okay, yeah, we'll see in a few minutes. Okay. After we learned the first three Mishnahs, which is B'dikas Chametz, which is the night before Pesach. So now we move on in time. Comes Erev Pesach in the morning, and Erev Pesach in the afternoon. So that's what the next Mishnah discusses. What happens now? We know that Erev Pesach by Chatzos, midday, we are forbidden to eat chametz. We're also forbidden to benefit from chametz. So if the day started at 12 o'clock p.m., which means at the end of 6 hours, from 12 and on, which means Erev Pesach from Chatzos, we have number one, a mitzvah of tashbisu, we have to get rid of the chametz. Number two, we're not allowed to eat chametz. Number three, we're not allowed to benefit from chametz. Now, how do we know exactly that time for tashbisu? The Gemara discussed that on Daf Daled and that hey, the long arichas, ach b'yom harishon, tashbisu, that ach means midday tashbisu. How do we know I'm not allowed to eat chametz, I'm not allowed to benefit from chametz? That's going to be a sugya in Gemara later, Daf Chavches. How we know that from chatzos you're not allowed to eat chametz and you're not allowed to benefit from chametz. But that's the bottom line. Midday comes, no eating and no benefiting. What do I mean by benefiting? I can't feed it to my dog, I can't feed it to my sheep, I can't feed it to my cattle, my cows, I cannot feed it to my birds, I cannot sell it, I cannot gift it to my neighbor who is a Gentile and is allowed to eat chametz. Rather, I have to get rid of it, destroy it. Because the time has come where I'm not allowed to have any type of benefit, enjoyment from chametz, whether monetary or social. Erev Pesach in the morning, I could gift it, I can feed it, I can sell it. You could sell it, make money off it. But there's a time limit, and that's chatzos. Yet, this Mishnah is going to introduce the fact that the rabbis pushed back. And the way they pushed back is an argument between two people, and the same two people we have been exploring in the sugya till now, which was Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Zog the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir says, Oichlim kol chamesh. You're allowed to eat chametz Erev Pesach the entire 5th hour. Again, for this sugya, which is all going to be about hours, we're going to, simply for simplicity's sake, assume that the day began at 6. And the truth is, Pesach time, the day does begin around 6, the equinox. So it's usually that time. So it's not so far off. But I don't want to do 6:03 or 5:54. It'll be simpler to do 6, which means that we divide the day into 12 hours. And in this case, it's perfect because it's 6 to 6. So every hour would be 60 minutes. And therefore, the beginning of the 5th hour would be 10 o'clock. The beginning of the 6th hour would be 11 o'clock. The beginning of the 7th hour would be 12 o'clock. Right? You know, you mind just taking one and doing it out. So 6 o'clock is, say, sunrise. It's the beginning of the first hour. 6:01, the first hour is already in motion. 7 o'clock is the beginning of the second hour. Yeah. 8 o'clock, the second hour ended and the third hour began. 9 o'clock, the 4th hour began. The 3rd hour ended and the 4th hour began. 10 o'clock, the 4th hour ended and the 5th hour began. 11 o'clock, the 5th hour ended and the 6th hour began. The 6th hour begins at 11 o'clock, and that's very vital. 12 o'clock, 11:59 and 59 seconds is the end of the 6th hour, and 12 o'clock begins the beginning of the 7th hour, which will go till 1, which will begin the 8th hour. And then you'll have the last hour. The last hour will be the 11th hour, the 12th, the 11th hour, and then the 12th hour, and you'll have 6 p.m. when night comes. Great. Comes Reb Meir and says you can eat chametz kol chamesh. The entire 5th hour, meaning till the end of the 5th hour of the day. So if the day begins at 6, Reb Meir says you can eat chametz not till 12, but till 11. And this is an Issa de Rabbanan. Midaraisa you can eat till 12. The rabbis pushed it back and said, sorry, 11 o'clock you should not be eating chametz anymore. V'sarfim b'tchilas sheish. And you burn it in the beginning of the 6th hour. Which means 11 o'clock starts the time of burning chametz. Again, an hour earlier. Minatayra tashbisu is at 12. Came the Chachamim and said, no, don't do it in the beginning of the 7th, do it in the beginning of the 6th, which is 11 o'clock. And that should also be the deadline for eating chametz. You finish eating chametz at 10:59, and 11 o'clock is the time to burn the chametz. Again, this is a rabbinic injunction, and that's why Reb Meir is introducing it in the Mishnah. It's important to emphasize, as I indicated, that according to most opinions, when we speak about the hours, 5th hour, 6th hour, 1st hour, we're talking about what's called an seasonal hours. Sha'os zmaniyos. Sha'os zmaniyos means not fixed hours. It's not fixed hours of 60 minutes, but it's what's called seasonal hours, which means you take the daytime and you divide it into 12 sections. If it's winter, and therefore daytime is shorter, so the 12 units will be shorter units. So your hour will be less than 60 minutes. If it's summertime and your day is longer, the time between sunrise and sunset is much longer, so then your hours will be more than 60 minutes. You're basically taking daytime, the time when the sun is shining, and you're dividing it into 12 pieces. And that's called Sha'os Zmaniyos, right? So you'll see Savzman Krishma is at the end of 3 hours. What does the end of 3 hours mean? It's not hours of 60 minutes. If it would be hours of 60 minutes, so then it would be a very different Savzman. It's you take the daytime and you divide it into 12 sections, and that's called a Shah. That's why you'll see the end time of eating chametz, or the time to burn chametz, right, will be 10:54 or whatever it is. It's based on that division called Sha'os Zmaniyos. No difference if the day is long or the day is short. There is a shita that the shayos, when it comes to chametz, destroying chametz, is the fixed hours of 60 minutes. There is such a view in halacha, although most agree with that. You don't divide it into 12. It's just a fixed hour of 60 minutes. There is another interesting question. It's not for discussion now, and that's when we say divide daytime. What do we mean daytime? Do we start with dawn break, or do we start with sunrise? Do we start with Alois HaShachar, or do we start with Neitz HaChama?
Also when the ends, maybe.
Of course, it depends. If you start with sunrise, you end with sunset, or you start with dawn break and you end with what's called Seisak Echavim, nightfall, which means it's a much larger span of time. You start earlier, you end later, or you start later, sunrise, and you end earlier, sunset. And this is a huge debate in halacha. The Trumas Hadeshet, brought in the Magen Avram, believes that the daytime begins with dawn break and it ends with nightfall. Yeah. Other shittas, famous the shitta of the Vilna Gaon, is that it begins with sunrise and ends with sunset. That's the shitta that the Magen Avram paskins, the Vilna Gaon paskins, Balatanya paskins, that we look at it from sunrise till sunset. That's how we look at it. That's why you'll see by Kriya Shema, though the Magen Avram agrees with the first opinion, that it starts with dawn break and ends with nightfall. By Krishma, he agrees with the first opinion. That's why you'll see on many calendars, it will say, Sovzman Krishma Magen Avraham, right? 829. Sovzman Krishma Gra and Rav. You ever see that? Gra and Balatanya. Rav is the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya is 920, an hour later. What's the difference? Or sometime later. And the reason is because we're doing 3 hours from the beginning of the day. But what's the beginning of the day? Is the beginning of the day sunrise, or is the beginning of the day dawn break, which could be an hour earlier? So your 3 hours are going to be completely different. Now again, you take the day, you divide it into 12 units, but how much time do you have to divide in 12? That's why you'll see different times of Sovzman Krishma. So if you're going to the Magen Avram, you got to do your Krishma much earlier. Right? And if you're going according to the Balatanya and the Vilna Gaon, you do your Krishma, you can still do your Krishma later, even though it's always better to do it earlier, but your deadline hasn't arrived yet. Okay, so this is very important. But generally, many shittas believe, and that's how we also paskin la halacha, that these hours are seasonal hours, not fixed hours. So Reb Meir's shitta is clear. You eat chametz in the 5th hour, you burn it in the 6th hour. Rabbi Yehuda says, Eichlin kol arba. You eat chametz for the 4th hour. V'toilin kol chamesh. And you keep it hanging for the 5th hour. V'soifim b'tchilas sheish. And you burn it in the beginning of the 6th. Meaning, he's much more stringent than Reb Meir. Reb Meir says, you can eat chametz a whole 5th hour. Rabbi Yehuda says, absolutely not. You can eat chametz only a whole 4th hour. Which means, according to Rabbi Meir, 11 o'clock you stop eating chametz and you start burning chametz. According to Rabbi Yehuda, 10 o'clock you already have to stop eating chametz. Because you can only eat chametz till 10 o'clock. The beginning of the 5th hour, and of course the 6th hour, is already usur in eating chametz. So that's what Rabbi Yehuda holds. You only eat chametz in the 4th hour. That means 10 o'clock, 2 hours before the deadline, you're already not allowed to eat chametz. Not like Rabbi Meir. And he says, Chol Chamesh, the 5th hour, you keep it hanging. What does it mean you keep it hanging? Keep it hanging means it's suspended because you don't have to burn it and you could feed it to your animals. You could benefit from it. So Rabbi Yehuda says, 10 o'clock you can't eat anymore, but from 10 to 11, where the Meir said 10 to 11 you can eat, Rabbi Yehuda says you can't eat. You keep it in limbo, meaning you could feed it to your animals, you could benefit from it. But you can't eat it, but you don't have to destroy it. And then Mesar from B'tchilas Sheish. They both agree you burn it in the beginning of the 6th hour.
Is it a contradiction that first we have to feed people that depend on us and animals including, and then we feed ourselves?
Okay.
So should be saying Tolin Arbo and Essen by Hamishi.
No, you could if you feed your animals in the morning, but if you want in the 5th hour you can't eat it for yourself, but you could still benefit from it. In other words, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the rabbis distinguished between the prohibition of eating and the prohibition of benefiting. According to Rabbi Meir, they didn't make a distinction. Everything is the 5th hour. From 11 o'clock, everything is forbidden, and you burn it then. According to Rabbi Yehuda, eating, they pushed back an hour earlier. And they said you can't eat till 10. You can only eat till 10. From 10 you can't eat, but from 10 to 11 you can still benefit. 11 o'clock you burn it.
So Rabbi Yehuda holds you were 2 hours.
So Rabbi Yehuda is more stringent. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. He believes that the mistake extends, yeah. Rabbi Yehuda said further, a fascinating thing, in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, they used to publicize these times for the public to see. And remember, the way they used to tell time was based on looking at the sun. You would look at the sun, and based on the position of the sun, you had to tell time. So we have to go into that mindset for this sugya.
They have a sundial.
Okay, so if you were the aristocrat of the century and you had a sundial, I don't know which year that developed, so you had a sundial. But generally speaking, the ability, the luxury I have to look at the wall and see 8:48 a.m., they did not have. That's why the sun was so important. They lived by the rhythm of the sun. It was extremely important. In a way, it's more organic because you're in tune with nature. You could live in a basement without windows, and night is day and day is night. You have electricity, you don't have to burn candles. Then you want to light, you have to light a candle. So we're very thankful for the Industrial Revolution and technological advancements, but it's important to understand also the challenges of being a little less associated with nature. Like when kids are learning today in Mishnayos about Hilchos Shabbos, about planting and plowing and harvesting and threshing and winnowing, one of the big chisroinus is they never saw a stalk of wheat in their life. You tell them threshing, the animal comes and threshes. It's all imagination.
Sometimes I don't even give them pictures to see.
Right. When it's important to take the kids out into the field, to take them to a field and show them what happens, because then the whole sugya Gemarah will come to life. They'll be able to put themselves in the mindset of the Tanaim, the Ameirayim. They'll almost be able to guess what they're saying often because they're there, they're living there. So it's just always important to understand they're looking at the sun, and based on that they're defining their clock.
You're saying an average person just take...
Yes, yeah. Around, exactly. It was always around. It's around.
Even in the cloudy days.
Even on a cloudy day, you didn't have a choice.
How could they tell?
You're right. In a cloudy day, the challenge was much greater because the challenge was much greater. So, but once you're telling time like this, even babies become attuned to the cycles. They know where the sun is expected to be, at what time of the year, the position. Today, unless you study it, or you really look at it and examine it, or read about it in astronomy class, and take, good, you study well, many people don't even know this. We take everything for granted. We take the sun for granted. We take sunrise and sun. But you couldn't take this for granted. And Judaism not only does not take it for granted, our whole existence is revolved around it. We're making brachas, right? Baruch atah Hashem yoitzer or, baruch choshech, yoitzer hama'oris, right? Hamachadish b'tuvim b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshis. You wake up in the morning, dawn breaks, sun rises. You're chiyuvim. You're basically living with nature. Your life is synchronized with the rhythms that God put into nature. Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, Kriyishma, Vasikin, etc. So in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, Rabbi Yehuda says something very interesting. They wanted to publicize what is going on because there was a huge crowd of people. So what did they do? V'oidam Rabbi Yehuda. Fascinating. Shtei chalos shel toida psulos hayamanachas al gava itztava. One of the offerings in the Beis HaMikdash was called a carbon toida. Carbon toida meant if you had a life, if your life was saved from peril, you had to bring a special gratitude offering, and it came with 40 pieces of bread. 40 pieces of bread. And they came from 4 types. 3 of them were matzah, and 10 of the pieces were made of chametz. And they used to take chalois psulos, which means 2 pieces of bread from a carbon toida that were disqualified. Why were they disqualified? We'll see in the Gemara. But they were disqualified, and they were placed every Erev Pesach al gava itztava, on the bench on the Harabayas. The Temple Mount had benches where people could sit. And they took one of those platforms, one of those elevated benches, and they put these 2 chalos that were puzzle. And the idea of chalos psulos is that they wouldn't use chalos that you can eat. The carbon toida you can eat. But the chalos that you can eat, they wouldn't put there. Because you're not supposed to take holy food and put it in a situation where ultimately you're going to have to burn it because you're leaving it there. Here it was puzzle, it was anyway disqualified. So they took these chalos. We'll soon see again why they were disqualified. They put them on a bench, and everybody saw them. As long as they're there, everybody can eat chametz. Nitla achas, if one was taken, Bezdin would send an emissary at 10 o'clock and take away one of them. Then, toilin, everybody knew now the chametz is in limbo. Lo yoichlin, lo sarfin. No eating and no burning. Nitlu shteyen, at 11 o'clock, they took both. They took away the second challah as well. Hischilu kol ha'am sarfin. Everybody knew now is the time to burn chametz. This is what Rabbi Yehuda says they used to do in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Of course, Rabbi Meir would agree, and he would say the simon was different. At 10 o'clock, they didn't do anything because you can eat it. At 11 o'clock, they took away shtei chalas, and everybody knew no eating, no benefiting, and time to burn. Rabbi Gamliel says, interesting.
Why they only bring Rabbi Yehuda then? Why not? Why did they bring Rabbi Meir instead? Or why did they only describe Rabbi Yehuda's what he saw in the Beis HaMikdash? What he said happened in the Beis HaMikdash? Why didn't they say Rabbi Meir?
Why is it a quote in the name of Rabbi Yehuda?
Does it prove that Rabbi Yehuda's the halacha?
We agree with it.
I guess because
There's a kitzur. You have to understand that.
First of all, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, right? Yeah. Usually, Rabbi Yehuda halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Usually, okay, not in everything, but usually Rabbi Yehuda halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. In the previous Mishnah, the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. We do b'dikas chametz in the middle of Pesach, right? Because over there he's arguing with the Chachamim, with the majority, right? Which includes Rabbi Meir. Here it's Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda as individuals. The halacha is usually like Rabbi Yehuda, and also the Mishnah finished with Rabbi Yehuda. So I guess it continues, and also I guess Rabbi Yehuda said this, and then Rabbi Meir perhaps responded. It's a good order. Rabbi Gamliel has a third opinion. Chulin echolin kol arba. Mundane food you can eat till the end of the 4th hour, which till 10 o'clock. Truma kol chomish. Truma, the rabbi said you can eat another hour. Over here, Rabbi Gamliel agrees with Rabbi Yehuda in principle, but with Truma, He agrees to Reb Meir. In other words, with Truma, they allowed you to eat it another hour. V'serf mitchilas you bring in the beginning of the 6th hour. In other words, Reb Gamliel agrees with Reb Yehuda that the Chachamim pushed back the deadline for eating 2 hours. But by Truma, he says, here they pushed it back only 1 hour. And the reason is because as long as you can eat holy food, you don't want the person to, you're not allowed to just throw into the garbage food that is holy, and therefore they didn't want to limit the time of eating more than necessary. 1 hour everybody felt was necessary. Why? Because the mistake was so common. Basically, it's really 12 o'clock, and I look up and what do I say? I say it's 11 o'clock. Right? It's 12:05, I say it's 11:05. It's 12, whatever it is. But let's say it could be 11:59 and I say it's 10:59. Because I'm looking up at the sky, that's what I see. So therefore I'm eating chametz and I'm violating a biblical prohibition. So the Chachamim said you have to go an hour back. So that way, even if you think it's 11 o'clock and really it's 12 o'clock, you're good, because you won't eat chametz, right? Rabbi Yehuda said, no, even 10 o'clock you're not allowed to eat chametz. Even 10 o'clock. Now that's not a common mistake. Rabbi Meir doesn't agree with Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbi Yehuda says there's a mistake that people make. It's 10 o'clock, and therefore don't eat chametz. Why? Because it could be 12 o'clock, and I think it's 10 o'clock. And because I think it's 10 o'clock, I'm eating chametz, and really it's 12 o'clock, I'm not allowed to eat chametz. So they were 10 o'clock, you're not allowed to eat chametz. But they still would not take away Isser Hana. Why? Here we have to understand their psychology. Very important to understand. Why would they not take away Isser Hana? You're going to feed the chametz to your dogs, and it's 12 o'clock. And it's forbidden, right? You're telling me that it could be 12 o'clock, and I think it's 10. And I'm going to feed the chametz to my dogs, and it's forbidden. And that's why you're telling me I'm not allowed to eat chametz at 10 o'clock. So even if I think it's 10, and really it's 12, it's not a problem because I'm not eating. The answer is, the Chaim had to be realistic with people's lives. Food, and I say this over and over, food was unbelievably precious. To tell a Jew you have to burn food when the Torah doesn't say you have to, is something they felt was, I don't know if I could use the word, but it would be like a criminal activity. You can't tell a Jew to burn food. It was just too precious, at least for many people. Maybe not for everybody, but for many people. And therefore, they were so sensitive. They already took away an hour. And that means if you didn't have a chance to sell it, if you didn't have a chance to give it to somebody, you lost it, you burnt it. So they were very, very sensitive with that. People could make mistakes. So yes, if it was a crazily common mistake, they would have no choice, because we don't want a Jew eating chametz by chatzos. That's why 11 o'clock they prohibited hana, according to everybody. But 10 o'clock, Rabbi Yehuda says, they're not going to cut off the whole relationship with chametz. In other words, we're going to still allow you to have a benefit from chametz, even though eating not. So did it protect the entire situation? No, but it protected a lot. It's a very interesting halach. It comes from Gamliel and says, yes, but truma, you can eat later also. Again, because they don't want to force you, because if the deadline is 10 o'clock, many people, if you have a lot of truma, right? And truma you can't just sell. Yeah. So therefore, you can't give it to a guy. So therefore, the kohen may have not finished eating the truma. What's going to happen 10 o'clock? The truma is going to be left. It's chametz. It's going to be wasted. It's going to have to be burnt. And you're not supposed to do that. So we give him an extra hour to be able to consume the truma. That's from Gamliel's shitta. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't make that distinction. So we have three shittas: Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir, and Gamliel.
Rabbi Yehuda could agree with that.
But then he would. Then Rabbi Yehuda wouldn't argue with him. Yeah.
What about no? You're not afraid you're going to eat because you're not over anyway.
Hana, you're over. But they felt they can't ban everything. You're right. Even though it's a mistake. Even though you have the same problem. 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock, right? And if you're not banning Hana, what could happen? It's really 12. You think it's 10, and you're feeding your dogs. That's true. That mistake could happen, according to Rabbi Yehuda. But they still would not ban Hana. The question is, what's their logic? If you're banning Achila, ban Hana, both are Asur. The answer, that's why I'm explaining, it's important to understand their mindset.
Yeah, to do everything.
They felt it's wrong. They felt it's a wrong zayr. It's not the right thing. In other words, you have to choose your battles.
Also, Mechiras Chametz, what time it happens? Isn't it happening from 10 to 11? Same thing?
Mechiras Chametz has to happen before the beginning of the 6th hour, right? Because the beginning of the 6th hour, there's no, just like I can't do bittel, right? So, yeah. Bezdin put down the chalas on the bench in the Harabayas, and everybody stood. It was like an alarm clock. It was like a siren.
They communicate this to people further away.
Oh no! Remember, the Harabayas was the Erev Pesach, the sheep, the goats, Carbon Pesach. You're right. If you were living in your own home, it was your own responsibility. This was just a public service. That's it. You're right.
They could just scream it out. They could scream it out.
Yeah, and I guess I guess it was tweeted right away. It went out on WhatsApp.
The concept of the three Shul Chodos implies Rishon too, right?
Perhaps. We don't know. But no, if you were at Harabayas and you saw this, or your brother saw it, he came home. And he told his wife, he told his kids, you went to Zaydi, you went to Bubba. You know, rumor spread.
So when's the earliest, this is
This is Bayis Sheni. Bayis Sheni.
So I'm saying, how do we know the earliest point at which that practice, there was a head? This is rather late. As you said,
Yeah, they're describing Bayis Sheni. Did they do this by Bayis Rishon?
I mean, you could have put a stick in the ground too.
Yeah, the question is, why did they choose these two chalas and why were they puzzle? We're going to get to that in the later sugya.
This is a later phenomenon.
Yes. We are now at getting to the end of Maseches Pesachim. I don't mean the end of Maseches. We're getting to the end of the sugyas of chametz and particular chametz, because the next section after this is Tumah and Tara, purity and impurity, where one of the sugyas where we have almost an encyclopedic display of the entire structure of purity and impurity according to halacha, which is going to be brought in from all of this. So that's going to be the next step. Okay, so now we have this three-way machlokes. Now, here the Gemara asks a question. Okay, now this is one of the longest questions in Shas. What do I mean it's one of the longest questions in Shas? The Gemara quotes a Mishnah, another Mishnah, discusses it, analyzes it, elaborates on it, questions, refutes, gets into a whole argument, right? And this continues for almost a blot. The question. And only on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis does the Gemara get to its question. Usually a question is a few words or a line, a quote of a Mishnah. Here, the question is so intricate. The question is so intricate that in order to get to the question, there's a huge introduction that goes through Yud Aleph Amud Beis, Yud Beis Amud Aleph, and on Yud Beis Amud Beis, the Gemara says, okay, and now, at last, we have our question. So this is a very unique question on our Mishnah. The Gemara needs a blot, and you want me to say it you want the preview. In other words, the lead up to the question is itself a whole sugya. That's the point. We're going to get to a question to understand our Mishnah, which seems problematic. But the lead up to that question seems like a very is a big sugya. Let's start. We'll go for a few minutes. Zog the Gemara. Tanan Hasam. We learned there. What's there? Whenever it says there, it means elsewhere, which is a Masechah Sanhedrin. We have two witnesses who came to testify about a capital crime, meaning a crime that could entail capital punishment, life and death. One witness says that this story happened on the second day of the month. Say there was a murder case. He murdered him on the second day of the month. The second one says it was the third day of the month. No, you should say there's an inconsistency here. One of them is lying. One of them is saying something untrue. He got the day wrong. They can't both be right. Says the Mishnah, a fascinating chiddush, a dusan kayemes. Their testimony is upheld. Why? Because we can comfortably assume that there is no lie here. Why can we comfortably assume? One of them knows about the fact that last month had an Ibur. An Ibur means it was a full month, it was a pregnant month, it was a month of 30 days. The other one does not know that, and he assumes that the month only had 29 days. So let's be practical. If they're contradicting each other about other things, for example, the day of the week, you say that it happened Sunday, I say that it happened Monday, this testimony is null and void. This is an inconsistency that destroys a testimony. You're not going to kill somebody for such an inconsistency, ever. Right? So I said Sunday, you said Monday, not good. But what if we both say Sunday? And then they ask me, which day of the month was it? I say it was the second day. It was Beis Adar. Which day of the month was it? They ask you individually, not in front of me. They interview, they cross-examine every witness individually. And you say it was Gimel Adar. Ooh, liars! No, not liars. There were no fixed calendars. It's the beginning of the month. People didn't know all the information. I know that last month had an extra day. Because last month had an extra day, it wasn't only 29 days, it was 30 days. So Friday was not Aleph, Friday was Lamed. So Shabbos was not Beis, Shabbos was Aleph. Sunday was not Gimel, Sunday was Beis. But you don't know that last month had 30 days. You think last month had 29 days. If last month had 29 days, so then Friday was not Lamed, Friday was Aleph. So Shabbos was Beis. So Sunday was Gimel. So therefore we cannot say that somebody is lying. It's just not fair because this was a common error people made. Again, by us, we don't understand this because you look at the calendar. It says on every calendar and everybody knows. But then it didn't exist. There was no calendar. Every month they had to decide this again. And what if you didn't know? What if you didn't hear the news? If you weren't in the hub? If you weren't, in the circle? Sometimes it took time. And if you lived far away, and even if you lived, whatever, you didn't know. It was just, it's too common of an error to destroy the testimony, as long as with everything else they're consistent, like the day of the week.
So that's not called a contradiction?
It's not called a contradiction. Fascinating. It's because, in other words, lack of knowledge is assumed. It's just assumed. The mistake is expected. Let's put it this way. So the fact that you said Gimel and I said Beis doesn't mean it's inconsequential. However, if one person says it happened on Gimel Adar and one person says it happened on Hey Adar, here the testimony is null. You could say one of them is ignorant about the last 2 months. The reason we're off 2 days is, right? I say it's Gimel, and I'm sorry, I say it's Hey, and you say it's Gimel. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because first of all, you don't know that this last month had 30 days, right? And also, you don't know that the previous month had 30 days. So therefore, we have a discrepancy of 2 days. You could say that, and it may be true, but as a court, we're not going to uphold this testimony because it's much less common. This is not presumed ignorance. This is room for suspicion. Suspicion that what? That somebody made up a story. And when somebody made up a story, it's not going to be consistent with the other story. Because the story, even though we have the same name, the same day of the week.
Okay, he wants to mess it up somehow. I mean, what's his idea? Oh, so he was paid?
Money. Some people say that money is an incentive.
So he would...
Davai groshi.
So he's bribed? Who was bribing? What?
Yeah.
I haven't understood why. I can understand.
You're a lawyer and you're asking me why people lie.
This is a base thing. This is not a Gentile court.
No, the witness.
But I'm saying he goes in front.
He goes to Besdin and he lies.
Yeah.
Couldn't you just made a mistake?
Or a mistake.
So I'm not talking about an innocent mistake. I'm talking about someone that we take on. It's really a lie. It's a willful lie.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm asking, how is that?
Perhaps he's getting $10 million. Yeah. Maybe there's hatred, animosity.
I didn't want to derail you, but it's
Sadly, we know that humans are capable of nasty behavior.
no, but there has to be a motivating factor.
Yeah.
To commit that.
Lamata metam vedas. Lamata metam vedas. Yeah. Edusam ptela, so this one is no. Here we get Lebedik. One guy says, it's the same day of the week, it's Sunday. We got it both right, it's Beis Adar or Beis and Gimel, we're good. But here comes the issue with hours. Bezin says, tell me, what time did it happen? The first guy says, B'shtei shoyos. Remember, by us, we'll say it happened 9:10. They didn't have a concept of 9:10. You're looking at the sun. There's no 9:10. I mean, you could guess it's 9:10, but how much value? They have to take your hour and divide it into 60 sections. Again, we don't understand it. So how would they speak? They would say, B'shtei shoyos. When did it happen? It happened in the second hour of the day, which means it happened after 7. Again, the day started at 6. First hour is 6 to 7. It happened after 7. It happened, as we would say, 7-ish, right? Between 7 and 8. I'll be there between 7 and 8. It happened the second hour. I saw it happen. I saw the murder, or whatever I saw. I saw the Adar, I saw the Chalal. When? 7-ish, second hour. Shtei shoyes, that's what Shtei shoyes means in 2 hours. 2 hours doesn't mean at the end of 2 hours. He's not saying it happened 8. It means it happened in the second hour. The third guy says b'shalosh shoyes. It happened 8-ish, 7-ish, 8-ish. Eidusan kayemas. We have to uphold this testimony. Why? Because when you're looking at the sun, this is just a presumed error. You think it's 7, and I think it's 8. You see it as closer to sunrise, right? You're looking at the sun, it's coming up in the east. I say it's 7, you say it's 8. It's too common. Again, they were consistent about the day of the week. They were consistent about the day of the month. They were consistent about another 5 things we're going to learn about. They're going to be cross-examined. We're not just saying like 7, 8, okay, let's kill this guy. It's not happening that way. There's going to be a very thorough cross-examination about what he was holding and where it was, like they do, and Beis Din will not stop because you don't want to, we don't try to kill somebody, we try to save somebody, as we will see. But this is not enough to say that there's an inconsistency here and there's a lie. We just can't do that. It's just too common. It's not fair. It's like, okay, dude, unless you want to destroy all testimony in the world, you're not going to get 2 people to always say 7. It's just not fair. But one said the 3rd hour, one said the 5th hour. Meaning, I said 8-ish, and you said 10-ish. Ooh, I do some ptela. Sorry, null. Divrei Reb Meir. This is what Reb Meir says. This cannot be upheld. Why? We could make a mistake about 1 hour, 7, 8. We're not making a mistake about 2 hours, meaning there is something that's not true here. Something that's not true. We have to be suspicious. Is it possible there should be a mistake? Of course. Just like with the 2 days of the month, the discrepancy. It's possible. But not enough that a Beis Din should say, we're upholding this testimony. This is enough of a leak, of a puncture in the truth, to say, sorry, we're out of this.
Capital case, so it would
Capital.
apply the same evidential principle.
Exactly. We're going to have to see, because we're dealing with capital cases here. Rabbi Yehuda says, Eidusan kayemas. Rabbi Yehuda says the testimony is valid. Why? Because he feels that people could make this mistake. It's just to be presumed. And therefore, you uphold the testimony. This is not a sign of a lie. Again, is it possible there's a lie? Of course, it's possible it's a lie even if we're both saying the same hour. On the contrary, right? Good liars make sure that they match, that story matches. But we got to follow. We got to follow the evidence wherever it takes you.
My question really is the same burden is high, but the burden is higher.
Much higher. The burden is much higher.
So that's similar to what
right.
the system is. So it's a lesser standard.
Right.
It's just about
yes.
You're going to kill someone.
Of course.
So the proof is much higher.
Absolutely. The stakes are very high in a capital case because a person's life is in limbo.
So I get to learn Sanhedrin.
Right. Yeah. One person says it happened the 5th, one person says it happened the 7th, meaning I say 11-ish, and you say, I say the 5th hour would mean 10-ish, and you say 12-ish, right? Even Rabbi Yehuda would agree that it's null. Why?
Morning and day is 2 different.
Morning and afternoon are 2 separate creatures. In the morning, the sun is in the east. In the 5th hour, which means 10-ish, 12 o'clock, after 12, the 7th hour, the sun is in the west. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda would say, this error is not to be accepted, and there is a contradiction. And if there's a contradiction, however you want to explain the contradiction, the contradiction is somebody was out for lunch, somebody doesn't know what he's talking about, somebody was hired, somebody was lying, somebody was alert, but there's a contradiction here. There's a contradiction. The story is inconsistent. Why? Because this is not a common mistake. It's not a common mistake. We have to assume here that there is something wrong. There's something wrong. It's not all innocent. It's not all valid. In other words, since, as Rashi puts it, we can look at the shade, and the shade is in 2 different opposite directions, in the morning versus the afternoon. So therefore, you must assume that there is a serious contradiction here. This is the Mishnah. So what did the Mishnah tell us? It told us, number one, about months. They could make a mistake between one day and the next day, but not if there's 2 days apart. That discrepancy is too much. In terms of hours, we had a very interesting machlokes. 1 hour off, everybody says you maintain the Eidos. 2 hours off, there was a machlokes. Reb Meir says you destroy the Eidos Ptela. So if I said the third, you said the fifth, it's not Eidos. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, we still validate the Eidos unless it is morning and afternoon. And then everybody would agree that the Eidos is bottled because it's too obvious. It's not a question of 8 and 10. It's a question of what? Of morning and afternoon. It's too obvious. Because it's too obvious, so therefore, we do not assume an innocent mistake. We assume that there is a contradiction here. There's a real contradiction. That's the Mishnah. Take a look. It's an interesting Rashi.
So it's 11 and then 12, 11 and then 1? 1 o'clock? I mean...
One said b'chamesh, and one said b'sheva.
Oh, so that's already after 12.
Yeah, the 6th hour is 11, right?
Right.
That's the beginning of the 6th hour.
Right.
12 is the beginning of the 7th hour. So it's echad omer b'chamesh, ve'echad omer b'sheva. Echad omer b'chamesh means it happened 10ish. And one person says it happened 1ish, meaning I'm not saying not 1ish, 12ish, sorry. 10ish and 12ish. After 12. After 12. So if you take a look in Rashi, the beginning of the wide lines. Echad omer b'chamesh, echad omer b'sheva. Afilu l'Rabbi Yehuda, the b'chamesh chama b'mizrachi shel rakia. The 5th hour, meaning from 10 and on, the sun is still in the east. Vayakhel lahavin, and you could see it clearly ayidei hatzeil, through the shadow. K'shenoisin yadei keneged hamizrach. When you place your hand towards the east, haya hava hatzeil etzad ma'ariv. The shadow will be on the west. Ubesheva, on the 7th, chama b'ma'ariv. The sun will be in the west. V'hatzeil etzad mizrach. And when you place your hand towards the west, the sun is at the west, and it blocks that sun, the shadow is now going to be on the eastern side. So the shadow is in two opposite directions in the 5th and the 7th hour. So therefore Rashi says, Rabbi Yehuda says, I can't assume innocent error. Right? But the same Rabbi Yehuda would say a moment before, that if somebody said the 3rd hour and the 5th hour, which means I said 8ish and you said 10ish, since it's both in the east, Reb Meir still says it's too much of a discrepancy. In other words, you got to look at the sun. The sun is too high, right? It's too much. Reb Yehuda says, no. I can assume an error because it's in the eastern horizon. Since it's in the east, so therefore, in my horizon, it's on the east, and the shade is going to be in the same direction. If I put my hand towards the sun, which is in the east, the shade is going to show up in the west, as Rashi says. So therefore, we can assume an innocent mistake.
So by chametz, you can still make the mistake.
By chametz, so what do we see by chametz? By chametz, Reb Meir pushes back an hour, right? Rabbi Yehuda says people make mistakes. 2 hours. Yeah.
Still there.
In other words, you can make a mistake between, according to the chametz. Okay, we're going to see how to reconcile. But by chametz, he's saying that you could make a mistake. It's really 12, and you think it's 10. And that's why he says you're not allowed to eat chametz at 10. A much bigger buffer than Reb Meir. Reb Meir is not assuming such erroneous misconceptions of people's minds. In other words, if it's 12 o'clock, you may think it's 11, but you're not going to think it's 10. Right? Rabbi Yehuda says no. It happens, and therefore it's a bigger buffer.
In order to shield the sun in front of you, the shadow is thrown backwards towards the rest of the morning. East, the shadow will be thrown west.
The shadow is thrown backwards, right?
And so if you're shielding in the west, it's thrown...
If you're shielding in the east...
If you're shielding in the east, it goes west.
The shadow goes west. If you're shielding in the west, which means in the afternoon, after 12, the shadow goes east. You could try it out.
But Rashi, I think Rashi says, that from 12 to 12:30 it's in the middle. So that it's dark, no shadow.
So 12 o'clock, it's over your head. So then we're going to see that as well. It's over your head, right? And the shadow is straight down. Yeah, it's not extending east or west.
So that would be a suffix in your din.
And actually, by chametz, it becomes applicable because that's the zman, 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock, right? Here he said it was already in the 7th hour, meaning 12:01, 12:10, 12:30, 12:50, 12:45. So Rabbi Yehuda says there's no room for mistakes.
But the Adam should know that. They should know that if they're going to lie, they're going to tell them.
You're right. They put their foot in their mouth. They put their hand in their mouth. Yeah, you're right. They put the sun in their mouth. I want to learn Rashi, and then we'll go to Amar Abaya. See Rashi, Echad Omer B'Shnayim B'Chodesh. The Rashis here are long, explanatory, and elaborate. Echad Omer B'Shnayim B'Chodesh. I'm going to read fast. If somebody doesn't understand something, you can ask. One says, B'Shnayim B'Chodesh Harag Zeh HaNefesh. On the 2nd of the month, one man killed somebody else. He killed a soul. Ve'echad Min Eidim Omer B'Shloisha B'Chodesh. One of the witnesses says it was the 3rd. Eidusim Kayemes. The Eidus is fine. Ubeistin Hayaboit Kenoisim B'Shavach Kiris Kedel Kamon. Bezdin used to ask every set of witnesses 7 standard questions, as we will explain later. There were 7 standard questions. There were also many supplementary questions. But there were 7 standard questions. And this was one of them. Which day in the month? This was a standard question. When did it happen? You said you saw a murder. Which day in the month? Says Rashi. Since both witnesses independently testified that it happened in the right day of the week, say Tuesday or Wednesday, and then when they asked him about the day in the month, here there was a variation, day 2 of the month or day 3, Beis or Gimel. So we say that they were both talking about one day. One of the 7 standard questions is which day of the week. One of the 7 standard questions is which day of the month. If we would have asked them which day of the week, and one would have said Tuesday, one would have said Wednesday, you're done. There's no Eidos. But since they both said it was a Tuesday, say, and then when it came to the day of the month, one said Beis, one says Gimel, we say that they're talking about one day, they're testifying about one day, that Tuesday, they both saw it on Tuesday. One knew about Ibur HaChodesh, meaning that the last month, last month was full, it had 30 days. And Aleph, Rish Chodesh, was on day 31. The one who said it was Beis, he knows this, and therefore, Rish Chodesh was a day later. Aleph was on day 31, became Aleph. The one who said 3, day 3, Savr Shehukva Chodesh B'Yom Shloisha. Rish Chodesh was on day 30. There was only 29 days to last month. And since many make this mistake, so Afal Pi Shemitzuvin Onu Lechalek Esedusan Kadesha Tibotel Lahatzilas Hanefesh. Listen to his words. Even though we, the courts, are instructed to try to split the testimony, to try to divide the testimony in order to obliterate it, in order to save a soul, and biyadenu koyach l'chalka. We don't have now the legal capacity. We don't have a crack that's big enough in the testimony to say, these 2 guys are not talking about the same story. This guy is telling me a story of Sunday. This guy is telling me a story of Monday. There's something off here. There is a contradiction. Somebody does not know the story. Whatever the motive is, a lie, a hallucination, a dream, a fantasy, but somebody does not know the story. That is what we will always try to do. We will always try to split the witnesses, to split them, to make them as 2 strangers who did not see the same event. Maybe they saw different events, maybe one of them didn't see an event, maybe one of them is hearsay, whatever it is. Here we don't have the capacity to do that. Nothing happened. So Rashi is telling us a big yesod. We could say that they're not making a mistake. We could say that they both know when Rosh Chodesh was. And the reason one says Beis and one says Gimel is, you know why?
Maybe it's different days.
It's different days. They're lying. One of them is lying. One of them is lying. Or one of them is describing a different story. It's not this story. We don't have to aid this. We could say that. Rashi says, Ein koyach b'yadeinu l'chalka. Because this was so common, it's not fear. It's not fear. We cannot delegitimize an aid based on the fact that you got the wrong day of the month. Why? Because there were no calendars.
Not only that, it's irrelevant. Everybody knew that on Tuesday.
They say true.
So the fact that
Exactly. If they wouldn't say both, if they both wouldn't say Tuesday, then it wouldn't work.
But it's not irrelevant. It goes in the bundle of sticks that equals credibility. We say that it doesn't raise to a level here
Exactly.
where you're not credible, but still it's a factor.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not irrelevant. It's
Right.
It's just
It does not delegitimize credibility.
it mitigates his error. So we say that it's a level of truth.
Exactly.
They know the questions that they're going to be asked. Wouldn't he check to see if it was 31 or 30? They themselves should check. No, but they could find out if it's 30 or 31.
Excellent. You're saying the Adis knew if you're coming to court, probably you prepped you. So why didn't he check out which day of the month? The answer is, excellent question. And I the way I would answer it is, I think even the Tzlach says this, one of the Mefarshim says this, he did. He did. He did. And he was walking the street, he went, right, what's today? The guy said, Bays. He asked one more guy, what's today, Bays? They all made a mistake. That's the point. He did. He probably did. Other nish. But even if he checked, that's the point. People make this mistake. Yeah, they don't know. They don't know. A dusim p'tela. What if it was Bays and Dalet, or Gimel and A? The Bahal Leka Lamidti. Here it's not an error that's common. Ukroksiv, the pasuk says, V'darashta v'chakarta v'hine emes nachayin adavar. When it comes to witnesses, you have to investigate. You have to inquire, you have to investigate. V'hine emes nachayin. And make sure that it's true, it's right. This is talking about, if we're going to use a few chamashim, could you bring a few blue chamashim? We're going to use...
If they didn't know what day of the month it was, how did they know when Yom Tov was?
That's Maseches Rosh Hashanah. That's a good question. They used to light torches, right? They used to light torches, and then they stopped with that, and they would send out emissaries. They did it every month, but then it stopped because the Sadducees took it over.
Why would people err then if they have it?
Because they nullified that system, because the Tzaddukim deceived the communities. So they started to send shluchim. They would take 2 children, they would send them out. It would take time, yeah. That's why many communities did not know when Yom Tov is. And that's when they started the concept of making 2 days Yom Tov. That's the whole system of Judaism in terms of Yom Tov changed because of this. So the pasuk speaks here about, what Rashi is quoting is, the pasuk speaks about Iran Idachas. When you hear that a nation, when you hear that a city went to Avodah Zarah, it's called Iran Idachas. So the pasuk says, "V'tarashta," you have to inquire. Well, not yet. V'chakarta, research. V'sha'alta heitev. V'hine emes nachayin adavar nesas atayv azez b'kirbecha. It's true that it happened. Emes nachayin. This is in Parshas. So Rashi says from here we learn shetehei dusan mechuvenas. It's Perik Yud Gimel pasuk Tesvav. You don't have to look now. I wanted it for later. V'hine emes nachayin shetehei dusan mechuvenas. The most important thing is, you heard a story, make sure that the testimony is mechuvan. Mechuvan means that they parallel each other, they match. V'iloi loy katlinon. And if not, we will not kill a person based on their testimony. V'hu v'hein pturim. And both will leave the court free, exempt from a punishment. This will not be a reason to kill the witnesses. Witnesses can only be killed through a process called hazama, which means when 2 other witnesses testify on the witnesses, not on the event. If they say, you too, how could you say that you were in Borough Park and you saw this event when that Sunday you were in Miami or you were in Melbourne, Australia, we saw you there? That's when witnesses will be penalized with the punishment that they tried to impose on the innocent victim. But in this case, when one person says it was Beis Adar, second person says it was Dalet Adar or Hey Adar, not Gimel, Beis and Gimel would work, but Beis and Hey, or Beis and Dalet, then we say that the Eidos is bottle. We do not have credibility here to be able to uphold this testimony because there's an argument about which day of the month, and it's more than 1 day apart which is not a common error, and therefore we will let this man go free, and we will let them go free too. The fact that one of them may have been lying, that he's going to have to answer to God, but the Beis Din will not punish him. Echad omer b'shtei shoyos. And one says the third hour, Edusam Kayem, is the Toya Adam Bekach. When you're counting, when your clock is based, when your time calculation is based on the sun and the sky, an hour is a common error, and therefore there's no breach of credibility.
If he made a willful lie in his testimony, that's what they take on, that his testimony is false. Why do they inquire further? Why don't they just say that's it? Why do we get to a psat?
They won't. You're right.
But I'm saying, since he's puzzled.
You're right.
Or did they bring someone else in, or did they just, is that it?
That's it. Unless other Adars came. If other Adars came, other Adars came.
In other words, once he's got a psul in his testimony, then he's out.
He's out. Yeah. Echad omer b'chamish v'echad omer b'sheva Edusam p'teila afilu Rabbi Yehuda. The b'chamish chama b'mizrachi shurakia v'yachal havana de hatzel k'shnois and yodi k'neged ha-mizrach hava hatzel l'tzad ma'ariv. In the morning, when the sun is in the east, you'll place your hand in the eastern side, and the shadow will show up on the west. Ubesheva, in the 7th hour, chama b'mayriv, v'atzei l'tzad mizrach, and the shadow will be cast on the eastern side. This finishes the Mishnah Maseches Sanhedrin, argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Amar Abaye, back to the Gemara, 4 lines from the top, from the wide lines. Amar Abaye, Abaye said, Kishatimtza loymar, if you want to be meticulous and understand what the Tanoim are saying, let me explain to you this Mishnah. According to Reb Meir, ein adam toyev v'lo klum. Halachically, we do not assume that a person is making an error at all. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the halacha is assuming and giving a leeway of making an error in a half an hour. You could be wrong by half an hour. What do I mean? According to the Meir, the halacha does not give any leeway for error. We say there's no room for error. If so, why does Reb Meir accept the testimony? When one said 7 and one said 8, I'll answer you. Because Ma'isa Kihava, we're assuming that when did the story happen? The moment the second hour left and the third hour came in. So this would be the moment of 8 o'clock sharp, 7:59, the end of 7:59 sharp, when the second hour ended and the third hour began. So the person who says that it happened the second hour, he means the end of the second hour, 7:59. The person who said it happened in the third hour, but he means the beginning of the second hour. So he's saying 7:59 and 59 seconds. And he's saying, right, 7:59 and 60 seconds, so to speak. He's saying this end of the second hour, saying the beginning of the third hour. And that's why we accept the testimony. In other words, we assume that Eidos do not make an error at all. There's no error. If we could prove that there was an error here, we would not accept the testimony. Ein adam toyev v'lo klum. So why do we accept it? Because one said second, one said third. You could say second means the end of the second, and third means the beginning of the third. So if we would be forced to say that they're talking about different times, we would attribute it to a lie, not to a mistake. Rashi, when you're going to be meticulous in the words of Reb Meir Rabbi Yehuda, timtza l'divrei Reb Meir the mekayim eidos the beis v'gimel umevatel shel gimel v'shel hey ein adam toyev v'lo klum. A person does not make any error. U'ledivrei Rabbi Yehuda the mekayim av shalosh v'chomesh adam toyev chatzi shah. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, we attribute error a half an hour, for half an hour. Li Reb Meir ein adam toyev v'lo klum v'atoyev shakrinu. And if somebody's making an error in time, we attribute it to a lie. So why does he uphold the testimony of 2 and 3? Because he says they're both talking about the same moment. They're not talking about different moments. The story happened at the end of 2 and the beginning of 3. As the second hour is leaving and the third one is coming in. And both were testifying about that moment. The Haidamar Shtayim B'Soif Shniya Kamar, the Haidakamar Sholish in the beginning. So this is what Reb Meir is saying. That person who says 2, what he means is the end of 2. 8 o'clock, mamish, when the 7:59 ended and 8 o'clock was coming in. And the second one said the third, but they were talking about the same moment. And therefore, halachically, I can accept the testimony. What happens if somebody says 3 and 5? Reb Meir says, I can't accept the testimony anymore. Because even if he means the end of 3, and you mean the beginning of 5, it means there's a discrepancy of an hour. If there's a discrepancy of an hour, Reb Meir says, what is happening? A person doesn't make these mistakes.
Everybody's separate was so good in knowing the time?
Oh, so now you ask, what do you mean, Eidah Adam Toyev V'Lo Klum? What, everybody's an expert? Everybody's an expert? We don't have a clock. Now everybody's an expert. 8:27. You're looking at the sky, everybody's an expert. Obviously, what it means is you're witnesses. You're coming to testify in a capital crime. What you should say is, I don't know which hour. They're not saying, I don't know which hour. They're saying, I know which hour. Here, Reb Meir says, Ein Adam Toyev V'Lo Klum. We're going to keep you to that. We're not going to say he made a mistake. Say, I don't know the hour. It looks, maybe, I don't know. You're an aide. Not made to say nobody in the world makes mistakes. Of course people make mistakes. Rabbi didn't have such a standard, nobody makes a mistake. In this case, when we're looking at the halacha of Eidus, we say, if they said an hour, we're going to hold you accountable exactly. We're not going to give you maybe a half an hour off, 2 hours. No. Exactly. Then how can we uphold the testimony here? The answer is, I say you meant B'Soif Shtayim. You meant B'Tchilas Sholish. It's the same moment. There was no toes. What you call the second hour, I call the third hour. You're talking about the end, and I'm talking about the beginning. So, Mela, there's no mistake.
So, according to Rabbi Meir, you'd rather have someone say that it was daytime, and it was morning, and it was afternoon, rather than a specific hour that's not correct.
So, Rabbi Meir feels that Bezdin's responsibility is to uphold the testimony in this case, and it's not a breach. It's not a breach of credibility. Rashi continues, and Rashi says, Ulekaman parich. We're soon going to ask a big question. How do we know that's what they meant? Maybe when he said 2, he meant 7, not 8, not 7:59. And since Reb Meir doesn't give room for error, that means you have to turn one of them into a liar. You don't say that they're talking about the same story and they're both truthful and one is making a mistake. Reb Meir says, Ein Adam Toyev. So l'chayre, you should say one of them is saying the non-truth. That's what the Gemara is going to ask. Abaye is saying, Reb Meir says, we assume that 2 means the end of 2 and 3 means the beginning of 3. Why don't you assume that 2 means the beginning of 2? Why don't you assume that? But Reb Meir says, no, we don't. We don't. Now again, of course, Reb Meir holds if you ask them, and one guy says, I mean 7. And the other guy says, I mean 8. I mean 9, right? The end of 3, and he says the beginning of 2. He says the beginning of 2. He says the beginning of 3. Of course you'll nullify the Eidus. No, but the Meir is not arguing with that. The Meir is saying that if they just say 2 and 3, Bezdin upholds the testimony. Why? Because we say he means the end of 2, he means the beginning of 3. This is Reb Meir. What's Rabbi Yehuda? L'divri Rabbi Yehuda, Adam Toyev Chatzi Shah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there is room for error a half an hour. Thus, if we say 2 and 3, perfect. Even if we say 3 and 5, it works perfect. What's 3 and 5? 3 and 5 would mean I say 8-ish. You have a chart, it may be easier for you. I say 8-ish, you say 10-ish, right? I say 8, after 8, you say after 10. 3 and 5. According to Reb Meir, it's disqualified. But if a person makes a mistake, 8 could make a mistake by half an hour, it works. Why does it work? So Gemara is going to say, we're going to say, Maisa ki have bepalga de arbaha. The story happened in the beginning of the fourth, in the middle of the 4th hour. Palga means half, midpoint of the 4th hour, meaning 3.5 hours from the beginning of the day. So if sunrise was 6, 7, 8, 9. It happened 9:30. Great. V'hai dekamar shalosh b'soif shalosh. The one who says 3 meant the end of 3. The end of 3 hours. Which is the beginning of the 4th hour. So if it's 6, and he said it happened in the 3rd hour, what's the 3rd hour? 8. He didn't mean 8, he meant 8:59 becoming 9. Right? V'katoi palga d'shaita l'kamei. So basically he made a mistake that the event, he made a mistake, palga d'shaita half an hour, l'kamei earlier. The one who said Chamash is Betchilas Chamash, the beginning of the 5th hour. He doesn't mean 10:59, he means 10 o'clock. He made a mistake and that he delayed the event by a half an hour. One person thought it was a half an hour earlier than it really was. One person thought it was a half an hour later than it really was. Rashi. The story happened in the half of the 4th hour, meaning 9:30, 3.5 hours. One person said 3 and 5, he means the end of 3, which is 9, he means the beginning of 5, which is 10. Everybody made a mistake by half an hour. It happened 9:30. I looked at the sky. It's 9. You looked at the sky. 10. I come to Bez and I say it's the 3rd hour. What's the 3rd hour? 3rd hour is the end of the 3rd hour. 9. 8:59. 9. You come to Bez and you say it's the 5th hour. You don't mean 11. You mean 10. And therefore Abaye says, Rabbi Yehuda says we hold up the testimony. And Rashi says, we're going to have a question. How do we go this length in order to bring together the Eidos? Why don't you say the Haibetchilas Gimel Kama, why don't you say this guy meant the beginning of 3rd hour, meaning 8, and the other guy meant the end of the 5th hour, meaning 11. There's a huge chiluk. It happened 9:30. I said it happened 8. You said it happened 11. Right? And there's a difference of 3 hours between us. I said 8, you said 11. They can't make such a mistake. Even if it happened 9:30, how can they make such a mistake? By an hour and a half? If I say 8, I made a mistake an hour and a half. You said 11, you made a mistake an hour and a half? Split the testimony, meaning say it's 2 separate stories. One is lying, and you save a soul. We're going to come to that question. But what we're learning here is, according to the mayor, we assume no error. And that's why the only testimony that we can uphold is if we can faithfully say there was absolutely no error. They both identified the right time, they just gave it different names. 2 and 3. End of 2, beginning of 3. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we give a half an hour room for error. Half an hour. Chatzisha. Half an hour. So I say 3, you say 5, I'm the end of 3, you're the beginning of 5, and the story happened in the middle point. It happened 9:30, I said 9, you said 10, we're both off a half an hour. Ikadamni, another version, in Abaye. Very, very similar, just one minute detail off. Amar Abaye, Kshatim Tzalem, and if you want to be Medaya, can explain it. A person could make a mistake by a mashu. Mashu means a small fraction of time, a tiny fraction of time. According to Rabbi Yehuda, an hour and a little bit. So this version actually gives a little more leeway. Story happened either at the end of the 2nd hour, 7:59, the beginning of the 3rd, which is 8. And one of them is making a little bit of a mistake. If it happened 7:59 and you said it happened 8, you're off a minute. If it happened 8 and I said it happened 7:59, the 2nd hour, I'm off a minute. In other words, according to this language, we're not assuming that they mamish mean that second. 7:59, 59.9 seconds where there's the transition of the 2nd to the 3rd. There's a mashu off. I said the end of the 2nd hour, you said the beginning of the 3rd hour. we assume that there could be a mistake by an hour and a little more. Story happened either at the end of the third hour or the beginning of the fifth hour, which means either the end of the third hour, which would mean 9 o'clock, or the beginning of the fifth hour, which means 10 o'clock, right? And one of them is making a mistake by an hour and a little more. If the story happened at the end of the third hour, meaning it happened 8:59, and you said it happened at the fifth hour, which is 10, so you're making a mistake an hour and a minute. If the story happened at 10, and I said it happened in the third hour, which means 8:59, so I'm making a mistake by an hour and a little more. Rashi, Chad minayu kotoi mashu, second to the last Rashi. On Daf Yud Aleph Amud. Im besoif shtayim hava hayde kama shalosh betchilas shalosh v'katoi mashu v'betchilas shalosh hayde kama shtayim besoif shtayim v'katoi mashu. L'divrei Rabbi Yehuda ma'is hava besoif shalosh v'hayde ama betchilas chamesh toi shar revius u'mashu shesoif shalosh. I said it happened at 10, so I got wrong the whole 9 and 1 minute 8:59 till 9. Inami betchilas chamesh. However, really it happened 10. I said it happened at the end. I said it happened in the third hour. I meant at the end of the third hour, 8:59. I missed the whole 9 till 10 plus that minute. Fine. This is the shitta of Abaya, how to understand the Mishnah. Rabbi Meir says people don't make a mistake at all, or a mashu. Rabbi Yehuda says people make a mistake a half an hour, or a shah mashu. When we're talking about witnesses who come to Bezdin, obviously we're more stringent because they're giving us an hour. We're taking them at face value. You said you know the hour, I will hold you accountable. That's Rabbi Meir's shitta, and Rabbi Yehuda gives a little more leeway. This is Abaya. Says the Gemarah, also Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, went Omr l'shmaitza kamei Rav. And he said over this conversation, this explanation of Abaye, this shmaitza, this discussion, he gave over to Rava. Omar, Rava heard what Abaye said from Reb Huna, the son of Reb Yud, and he says, I don't understand. Uma ilu daikinon ba'ani sadi. If we would be medayik in the testimony of these witnesses, if we would get meticulous, if we would get down to it and we would start being medayik means chopping it up, dissecting it, dicing the vegetable. We would really be medayik. We would, from the word dayik is from the word we say in the morning, hadek, hetek, hadek. If we would grind up the testimony, you would take it apart. That's what medayik means. You would take it apart. You would crush it into little pieces, right? If we would be medayik. And we would say, Haidekam are shalosh, but chilas shalosh. When you said the third, you meant 8, not 9. The end. According to this, it's an edus that contradicts each other. Mukheshes means they're denying each other. Why? Because according to the Yehuda, a person can make a mistake at most an hour, but not 2. If I said 8 and you said 10, I said the third hour would mean the beginning of the third hour. It could mean the beginning, could mean the middle, could mean the beginning. You said the fifth hour. I'll do it at the end of the fifth hour. What's the end of the fifth hour? 11. Right? So I'm saying 8, you're saying 11. That's a discrepancy of 3 hours. 8 is Mekashas. So if I would come and say 8, then you would come and say 11, what would Rabbi Yehuda say? Of course we can't accept this testimony. They're contradicting each other. It's a different story. One of them is lying. V'loi katlina. And then you would never kill the man. We're going to stand up and take the life of a person based on a suffix because I could justify the testimony? I don't understand. The Torah says, Parshas Monsey, the pasuk says, in Parshas Monsey, Perik Lamed Hey Pasuk Chav down. I don't know if you have the psukim on the side, but if you do, you can take a look. It says V'shaftu Eida Ben Amako Ben Goyel Adam. The community, the court has to judge, and then the Torah continues the next pasuk. V'hitzilu Eida Sertzech Me'ad Goyel Adam, and they save him. What do you mean they save him? If he's guilty, they don't save him. So Chazal learn out from here a big yesod that the focus always has to be to save, not to kill. If you don't have a choice, you got to kill. This doesn't mean you pervert justice. If there's accurate testimony and cross-examination, and it's determined halachically that the man is guilty, you have to implement the verdict, whatever the verdict is. But the focus is, if there's a way out, if there's a way of finding a breach in the testimony, we go for it. That's the focus. In other words, yes, we have an atiyah, we have an inclination to try to save a person, not to kill a person. If you don't have a choice, you have to follow the halacha. This doesn't mean bias because we don't want to. If we have to, we have to. But if we don't, if we're not forced by halacha, we don't. So Rav is asking a gewaldige question. I know Abaya could be right. Maybe he means the end of the third, and the other guy means the beginning of the fifth. I'm good.
Why can't you ask them if it means the beginning or the end? They don't know.
No, if they say clearly what they meant, then there's no argument. One guy says the third hour, and I mean the beginning of the third hour. And you come and say the fifth hour, and I mean the end of the fifth hour. Then we're not doing this game. Then they're contradicting each other. You're talking about 8, which is the beginning of the third hour. You're talking about 11, which is the end of the third hour. There's a discrepancy of 3 hours. Reb Meir wouldn't agree. Reb Yehuda would agree. Sorry, that's it. This is not testimony. It's like you saying it happened Wednesday. Rosh Chodesh, the other guy says it happened a month later. It's over. Just like 2 months. Right? We're not accepting this testimony. Sorry. Too much. Too much discrepancy. We're talking about they just said the hour. So it could be a few things. It could be they left. It could be we finished the whole examination and they're gone. That could be. Or it could be that, I would say Bepashtus more. You're saying, why don't you just ask them, right? Why don't you just ask them?
Why don't you ask him if it's, do you think it's more like 4 and 5, or 3 and 4, or 3 and 2? So, and they see if there is an intersection. If they say 3 and 4, and the other one says 4 and 5, that means they could have seen in the same hour. So that
They're saying,
if
they're
you
saying because they left. They get the testimony.
Everything's approximate.
yeah, but Hakira,
There's no minutes and it's all approximate. Everything is approximate. That's the second version. That is only a mashu. It's a mashu off.
Rabbi's whole thing is you have to see the light
That's
That's really what he says.
Yeah.
Why do you have to go to the extreme now? I can go to a case where you can save him. That's the whole question that he says.
Yeah.
What do you mean? 2 and 3 and 4
I don't
and 3?
understand, why, you want to say that the witnesses left, and why don't they let everyone sit there, and then
So he's not arguing with the buyer then.
If they know that in the Pasha, or that there's a contradiction that's present, then they would certainly recall the first witness to testify what his testimony.
Yeah. So I think the glatt thing to say is that the witnesses are not answering that question.
No, if witnesses say
They're feigning ignorance in that question.
So the record's closed, and they're looking at a closed record.
So we're looking at a closed record, third hour, fifth hour. Abaya said, okay, we say end of third, beginning of fifth. Right? End of third, beginning of fifth. Reb Meir says, sorry, too big of a discrepancy. Reb Yehuda says, I'm good. People make a mistake by an hour. It may have happened at the end of the third, and you made a mistake. It may have happened at the beginning of the fifth, and I made a mistake. Comes Rav, I don't understand. If you want, take it apart, you can also tie it to the beginning of the third and the end of the fifth. You're not sure. That's the point. If they said, then I have no issue. If one guy says the third, and I mean the end of the third, then I don't have an issue. Then he's basically saying the beginning of the beginning of the fourth, right? And the other guy says it's the fifth, and I mean the beginning of the fifth. Fine, so it's clear. But you don't know. You're being medayik. So he says, if you can be medayik, you can also push them this way, not this way. You're trying to push them together. You could also go like this. Why are you going like this and killing the guy? Why don't you go like this? Separate them and save the guy. That's my question. So if we have some mitzvah that we have to kill, Chalila, fine, but we have fakert. V'shavt away the vitzilu. Wherever there's a suffix, what do? We right away chop on that suffix, even if it's a little suffix, and we don't kill somebody. In other words, to kill, you have to be ultimately certain. Not to kill, you have to have a doubt. That's the difference. To kill, you have to be 100%. Not to kill, you don't have to be 100% innocent. I don't know. If he's a danger, we may imprison him. But I don't know, I can't kill somebody. Here, you don't know. If you don't know, say that you don't kill him. A very strong question of Rav.
No concept of calling back witnesses to clarify.
So you're saying call them back.
I'm asking you how the Torah works.
Let's say you call them back. Right?
And they ask him if the, what do you think, it was
No,
third
obviously you're talking about a scenario you can't call them back.
Or he doesn't know.
If you can't call them back, you can't call them back. Or they push it, they don't know. They can't say more. So we're the ones who have to now deal with it, the Bezdin. So that's Rav Shaila.
Abaya now is out. Abaya is not good.
Rava was very upset. Rava was very upset. I don't understand. Rava says you misunderstood the Mishnah. You misunderstood the Mishnah. You were wrong. The Mishnah does not mean that. The Mishnah means we do divide them. We divide them as much as possible. We will do everything to divide them. But sometimes, even if we do that, we still have to uphold the testimony. Ela Marava. Ela Marava. Let's see Rashi. Beautiful two Rashis here. L'shmaitza da Abaya. He said over, the Buna said over the halach of Abaya. Amar Rava. Rashi here really goes out on Abaya with the name of Rava. Are you really right that Reb Meir says we only give leeway of a mistake of a mashu and Reb Yehuda an hour according to the second version? If that's the case, how are you combining the testimony? Who told you that the first one meant the end of the hour and the second one meant the beginning of the hour? Because you're trying to make them close. You want that their edus should be so close that the only discrepancy should be the amount where people make mistakes. So we could say it's just a mistake, it's an innocent mistake. What if you would have done the other opposite? You would be medayik to divide them. Matzis lememi, you could say haydamar shalosh b'tchilas shalosh, v'haydamar chamish b'soif chamish, v'yashchiluk b'nei and shalosh shoyes chosem mashu. There's a discrepancy of 3 hours minus a little bit. Because if I said the third and I meant the beginning of the third, it's 8. And you said the fifth and you meant the end of the fifth, it's 10:59. So it's 3 hours chosem mashu, missing let's say a minute or a little bit. I'm using the word minute. They didn't have minutes, but a fraction. And since you're saying people don't make such mistakes, their testimony gets divided, split. It's a contradiction. And we don't kill this guy. And we're going to stand up and make their edus close just to kill that guy? We search for the benefit. We search to save, not to kill. Since Rabbi Yehuda says the edus is valid, shmami no the svirilu that he holds, even if you divide them to your utmost capacity. You're going to say and the first guy meant the beginning, and the second guy meant the end. Yeshlach litlois betos. You could still attribute it to error. Ve'ein chayachel hakchishim. You can't deny them. Sha'adam toya b'chol zois, because people make an error. So Rabbi Rava is changing the entire pshat. What does Rava say? Elam Rava, back in the Gemarah. L'divrei Reb Meir adam toya shtei shayos chasem hashu. Whoa. Reb Meir says we give people room to make an error by 2 hours. Missing a fraction. According to Rabbi Yehuda, room for error 3 hours, missing a fraction. And he explains. So when I say 2 and you say 3, the story happened either in the beginning of the second or the end of the third, meaning I said 2, that's 7. So we're going to say I meant 7. You said 3, which is 8, so we're going to say you meant 8:59. So the discrepancy between me and you is what? 2 hours chasamashu. I said 7, you said 8:59. Why? Avada, if I meant 7:59 and you meant 8, it would be gewaldic. But I'm not going to do that to kill somebody. I'm going to try to separate you as much as possible. I'm going to give you the worst possible recommendation, not the best possible recommendation. I'm going to divide you. I'm going to say second hour means 7. Third hour means 8:59, not 8 o'clock. That's what I'm going to do. And if I say that, what does it mean? It means that the discrepancy between me and my friend was how much? 2 hours chasam mashu. 7 and 9. A drop less than 9. That's why it's Shtei Shoyes Chasam Mash. Divri Reb Meir Adam Toyer Shtei Shoyes Chasam Mash. Ma'aseh Kavoi B'tchila Shtayim B'sev Shoyes V'chad Minayu Katoyer Shtei Shoyes Chasam Mash. Yeah, and one of them made an error by 2 hours, less than a fraction, and we are assuming that this is a very common error, and Reb Meir says, therefore, I cannot say that this testimony has a loophole. It doesn't have a hole. It doesn't have a breach. Person looks up and makes a mistake. In other words, it may have happened 8:59, right? And I took a look, almost 9 o'clock, I took a look, and I thought it was 7. That's yeah, it's early morning. On the other hand, it may have happened 7. You took a look, and you said, it's almost 9-ish. It's almost 9-ish. Shtei shoyes chasam mashu is a mistake. It's human error. There's no reason to say they're lying. I'm sorry. I can't. It's not anymore v'yitzilu eidah. Huh?
Is this all around the clock? Means they like
Around the clock, yeah. Around the clock.
The middle of the night is one thing, like but 8 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock in the morning, you see the difference in the sun. It's like
That's the point. That's the point. That's what Meir says. Rabbi Yehuda says, Adam toyer shalosh shayos chasam mashu. I give you room for error 3 hours minus a fraction. So if I say the 3rd hour, you say the 5th hour, again, we're going to try to divide. We're not going to try to connect. I'm going to say the beginning of the 3rd hour is 9. You said the 5th hour, it's the end of the 5th hour is 11. Or a drop less, 10:59, right? Because it's the 5th hour. So say 10:59. Story happened either the beginning of the 3rd hour, meaning 8, or the end of the 5th hour, meaning 10:59. Yeah, one of them made a mistake by 3 hours minus a fraction. So even if we're going to interpret their hours in the most remote and distant possible way, to widen the discrepancy, not to lessen the discrepancy, I still uphold this testimony. Because this is not a lie. There's no breach. There's no breach of authenticity here. There's no sign of dishonesty here. This is a common mistake that people make. Why? Because they're counting their clock. They're counting their time based on the sun in the sky. Let's see Rashi. Ela Marav. L'Reb Meir Adam Toya Kol Marshata Yachal Chalak Es Elu Shoyim Mekayim Medusa. We're going to try to divide the Hainu Shtei Shoyes Chasam Mash. Umishim Hachi Edusan Kayemes the China Miamrit Zeh Shomer Shtayim B'Tchila Shtayim V'Zeh Shomer Shalosh B'Seif Shalosh. So listen to his words. Kol Regoyim Shebeintayim Sheira Ma'aseh Behen. All the minutes, all the seconds, all the moments that the story can happen between 7 a.m. and 8:59, yesh la'elu litus v'loy makamay sham. Whether the murder happened 7, or the murder happened 7:38, 8:30, 8:45, 8:59, in this span of time, if it happened, a person is justified to say it's 7, it's 8:59, it's 8, it's 8:30. It's all justified. Why? Because it's a span of time that lends itself to this error. There's a margin of error we give you. Rashi says, the Tos Moetis. Of course, if the story happened at the end of 2 or the beginning of 3, I say 2, you say 3. The story happened either at the end of 2 or the beginning of 3. The Tos Muetesu, then it's a very small margin of error. Why is it a small margin of error? Dinami Amar Hai Betchila Shtayim En Kantos Elasha. V'Hainami Amar B'Seif Shalosh En Kantos Elasha. If it happened at the end of 2 and the beginning of 3, or the beginning of 3 meaning, it happened 7:59 or 8 o'clock. Then Avada we understand Reb Meir's view. Because even if I said 7, right? And you said 9, you're only an hour off. Even if he said 3 and he means at the end, Ein Kantos Alasha, El afilu have a ma'ase betchila shtayim, v'haydama shalosh b'soif shalosh. V'yesh kan tol shtei shoyes chasem mashu, afilu hachi en koyach lanu levatlon she'af bekach adam toya. Even if we're going to assume that that you meant the end of the third hour. And the story happened when? In the beginning of the second hour. So we're dealing with 2 hours less a fraction. A person makes a mistake. Well, Rabbi Yehuda Nami, and Rabbi Yehuda Nami, we're going to make the same cheshbon with 3 hours. Ubahayin yona de pirishus, the chinami merachekaslu b'chola yecholas, akati to b'hochi. Even as we distance them as much as we can, people still make this mistake. The Hainu Shalosh Shoyes Chasemashu, Maisa Kihavi, he goes through the story Chuli, that basically it happened in the beginning of 3 or at the end of 5. Kaloima, B'chol Mar Shata Yochel Laharchik, Afilu Ha'echad Amar Shabba'isa Shah Haya Maisa, Ein Eid Harachik Mimeno Mukchush T'Tobach. Go as far as possible from each other. And one says that's the moment it happened. It happened at the beginning of the third hour, meaning it happened 8 o'clock. And you're going to say that the other story happened when? 11 o'clock. It's fine. 3 hours less a fraction, a person makes a mistake. Granted, this is how Rava understands the Gemarah.
You told Rafuna that you must have heard.
Told
Rafuna that you must have heard wrong from Abai.
He didn't say you heard wrong. He just couldn't understand how Abaye would say this. Take a look.
He heard specifically that it was a short time.
Yeah.
So that means he must have...
Yeah. Take a look in Tosfos, the top Tosfos. Ella Amar Rava L'Divri Reb Meir Adam Toya Beis Shayos. Interesting question. Gewaldige question. Reb Meir said you can make a mistake by 2 hours. So if I say 2, you say 3, it works. Maybe I meant 7, you meant 9. That's fine. It works. Im Taimar im Kein Echad Eimer Begimel Vechad Eimer Behei Amay Yedu Samtela Name of the Bereviyas have. If so, why does Reb Meir argue in a case where one said the third hour and one said the 5th hour, and here he argues Rabbi Yehuda? It should still work. Why? Because, say the story happened in the 4th hour. In other words, I meant the beginning of the 3rd. You meant the end of the 5th. So I meant 7. You meant 11. Right? That's a big jump. 7 till 11. Begimel ubehei. Right? I say begimel. So we say it's the beginning of the 3rd hour, 8. And you said the 5th hour, which is the end of the 5th hour, which is 11. That's a chiluk of 3 hours. So Rabbi Yehuda says it works. Rabbi Meir says it doesn't work because 2 hours, yes, 3 hours, not. For Tosfos, it should also work. Why? You can't say they're liars. Say the story happened when?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Story happened right in the middle. You're saying 11. I'm saying 8. So say the story happened 9:30. Even 9, a little after 9. You say people have 2 hours, almost 2 hours. Say, if you say the story happened like one side, 8, then you have to be lying because you gave me an 11. I got it. The story happened at 11, then I have to be lying because I gave you an 8, and people don't make this error. But according to this, Tosfos says, why is it made arguing with Rabbi Yehuda? Say the story happened in the 9s, and they both are honest. Because Rava holds, that the Meir holds, you will never attribute a mistake to both. That's already too much. It's too much benefit of the doubt. Another one guy made an error, I'm fine with that. An error by 2 hours, I'm fine. But to say that everybody is, both are off, I don't say that. That's why the Meir says, one guy, yeah. To say both, I'm stretching it. Bezdin says, sorry, we're not killing anybody for that. Can't. Why does it Meir say it's not good? When one says gimel and one says hey, the Meir says the edus is bottle. Why? Be medayik in the edus and say gimel is soiv gimel. And if it's soiv gimel, that means it happened 9 o'clock. So even if it really, I say it happened 9 o'clock. Even if it really happened 11, I'm still good. To be machmir and to be mekayim the edus to kill, we're not going to go crazy. You could find out that it's b'soif gimel and then kill the person, but we're not going to do it. V'hitzilu ha'eda means I'm going to try to grill them until I see what happens. In other words, Rava is telling us, don't stop grilling. He tells them, don't stop grilling. If you find out, Taka, he meant the end of the 2nd hour and the beginning of the 3rd hour, fine. But if not, if you find out he meant different, for sure you have to change it. Even if you don't, if it's a suffix, give the benefit of the doubt. And v'itzilued. So Tosfos says, but the opposite Rav is not going to say. You're not going to say, grill him, find out that he meant the end of the third hour. If you meant the end of the third hour, you'll kill the guy. So that we're not going to do. We're not going to do. Again, if he tells us it was the end of the third hour, we don't have a choice. If we have to kill, we have to follow halacha. We can't mix in our personal incentives here. But the point is, I'm not going to go destroy him until I get out that soif that could kill the guy. With the other way, I will do it. And if I can't get a clear answer from him, I'm going to say, okay, I don't know. But if I could make it that hour, I'm going to save a person. That's what I'm going to do. You have to teach. Rabbeinu David says, one of the Rishonim, Rabbeinu David says, he tries to justify it. You have to explain something for Abaya. He says, even though the Rabbeinu David says that Abaya holds, even though the Torah says v'shaftu eida v'itzilu eida, he says that we do not assume witnesses are lying if we could say they're not lying. That's what he says. Taka v'itzilu eida, but Rabbeinu David says Abaya holds, we never assume edus to be lying if they have a cheskes kashrus, if they're fine people. We'll not assume if we could say that they're not lying. That's Abaya's point. That's what Rabbeinu David says Abaya holds. Rava holds, no. Rava holds, that's not the way to do it. The only way we will not say they're lying, the only way we will assume they're not lying is if it's a common error. In other words, if it's a common error that people are constantly making, the sun is in the sky, and you're making an error by an hour, you're making an error by 2 hours, going to be by 3 hours, then we're going to say that since it's very common for people to make this error, we're not going to say they're not making an error and they're lying. That we're not going to do. Even Rava won't do that. V'itzilu eida also has limits. V'itzilu eida doesn't mean I'm going to dafka prove that you. I could always say I can always say people are lying, right? Any aid could come and we could say, oh, the guy is lying. How do you know? We can always do that. But we don't do that. An aid, unless we discover a breach. So Rabbi Yehuda says, if it's not a shear that people have the derech to make an error, then Rava says we will not match their edus to each other. Where Abaya actually has a different perspective. Abaya holds that we will not assume edus are liars if there's a way to explain what they said without a deception. And since Rabbi Yehuda says a person only makes a mistake by a half an hour, or according to the second version, by an hour. So now we can interpret the testimony in two ways. One, in a way that they're lying, because the discrepancy is too wide for error, for margin of error. And one in a way that they're not lying, and that's how we're going to interpret it. Where Rava absolutely argues, and he says that this is the opposite of Hitzilu Eid. Our focus shouldn't be on assuming that they're innocent. Our focus should be on assuming that the victim, the potential victim, is innocent. So here we have the big machloikus of Abaya and Rava. How to understand this Mishnah.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.